Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett were the most perfect couple Hollywood ever made. When they walked together, everyone in the world thought their love would last forever. But behind all that glamour was a story more painful than any movie they ever acted in. There were nights when Lee sat alone in his empty house, hearing Farrah say another man's name while she was sleeping. That man wasn't a stranger. He was Lee's best friend. When Lee found out the truth, he didn't get angry and yell. He quietly packed his bags and left the mansion that used to be full of happy sounds. Farrah tried to get back together with him later, but it was too late. What did Lee Majors say about Farrah Fawcett? And what about them shocked everyone in the media? Long before they became famous, Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett were just two young actors in Hollywood. Lee was already a little bit famous. His tough good looks, strong eyes, and quiet confidence made directors notice him. He wasn't loud, but he was the kind of man who got people's attention. After he acted in The Big Valley, he became a rising star, the kind of man Hollywood always wanted. Strong, honest, and hard to predict. Farrah was different. She was like a warm breeze from South Texas, with a bright smile and energy that made any room feel alive. She came to Los Angeles with just one suitcase and a dream. But right away, her amazing beauty made Hollywood pay attention. They met at a party in the late 1960s. From the first moment he saw her, Lee knew he had just met the woman who could make him crazy. They quickly became close and couldn't be apart. Lee took her everywhere. He called her Sunshine Girl, and she called him the man who turns red when he lies. Back then, people saw them as Hollywood's perfect couple. In 1973, they got married in a beautiful wedding and made a promise for life. "I'll protect you, even if the whole world turns against you." When Lee became Colonel Steve Austin in The $6 Million Man, he became a hero to everyone in America. His face was everywhere, on lunchboxes, magazine covers, even on children's toys. And Farrah, in just a few years, went from modeling for shampoo ads to being a beauty icon. Her red swimsuit poster sold millions of copies, hanging in dorm rooms and bedrooms of a whole generation of American men. Hollywood called it Farrah Fever, like a storm named Farrah. Fame hit like a hurricane. Packed filming schedules, interviews, ads, events. Farrah became the golden girl with hundreds of appointments from people who wanted to work with her. But Lee was the last person on her list. Frustrated that his wife was becoming more distant, he tried calling her manager, even showed up where she was filming. He also asked producers to change her schedule so they could have dinner together. But Farrah said no, for a heartbreaking reason. "I need to prove I'm not just Lee Majors' wife. I have to stand on my own." Lee understood, but it still hurt. In an interview, he said, "We only saw each other 2 days a week. And honestly, it wasn't good time together anymore." He, the man who was once America's symbol of manhood, now sat alone in a cold house, staring at his wife's face on magazine covers that millions of people wanted. And Farrah, between filming, learned to smile more perfectly, stand taller, and ignore her husband's messages. Fame had made her a superstar, but it also destroyed the happiness she had at home with her family. By the late 1970s, the marriage, once called Hollywood's golden couple, began to fall apart. They still smiled together for cameras, but their marriage was now just a show to keep up a perfect image. Then, the tragedy happened. While Lee was filming far away, another name came into his wife's life: Ryan O'Neal. A charming man, once a star in Love Story, and most importantly, Lee's best friend. Through Lee's stories about his wife, Ryan understood the loneliness of Hollywood, something this woman was trying to survive. Their relationship started quietly.
late-night phone calls, friendly lunches, then slowly became what the newspapers called the blonde angel's secret love. But secrets in Hollywood never stay hidden for long. One morning, when he woke up in a hotel, he read the front page of the Los Angeles Times. Bold affair, Farrah Fawcett and Ryan O'Neal, today's biggest shock. On the front page of every big newspaper, the blonde angel was replaced by shocking headlines. Farrah betrays the perfect man. Lee thought he was reading it wrong, but no, the photo below proved it all. Farrah was smiling beautifully, and the man next to her was his closest friend. Lee Majors broke down. He threw the newspaper on the ground and punched the wall. A dry, cracking sound echoed, but he didn't feel any pain. He picked up the paper, ripped it into tiny pieces, threw them all over the room and yelled, "That bastard stole my wife!" The friend he trusted and the wife he loved had both betrayed him, and the whole world knew before he did. Hundreds of calls came in. He hung up on all of them. He called his manager, his voice shaking with anger. "I want a divorce, today, right now." The other person was quiet for a second. "Lee, are you sure?" the manager asked, scared. "The movie is about to start filming." "She cheated with my best friend," he replied, his voice breaking like he might cry. He hung up, standing alone in the destroyed room. The torn newspaper was at his feet. Pieces of Farrah's smile were scattered across the floor. That night, Lee Majors drank alone. But instead of yelling at his wife, he chose the cruelest response: complete silence. Despite Farrah sending hundreds of letters, he canceled all interviews, refused to appear in public, and disappeared from the red carpet and Hollywood. In 1982, Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett officially got divorced. No fighting, no blaming, just a simple divorce agreement ending 10 years that once sparkled like a fairy tale. And from that day, Lee Majors never said Farrah Fawcett's name again. Unlike her ex-husband, Farrah became a target for the media. Every time she stepped outside, she was surrounded by dozens of cameras. Did you betray him for fame? Was Ryan worth losing everything for? In a rare interview, Farrah admitted it was the time she was most afraid of herself. "I couldn't look in the mirror. I saw a different woman, cold, tired, and a stranger to myself." Farrah's career crashed. Ad contracts were canceled. Studios didn't want to sign her, afraid that the cheating wife image would make people angry. From an A-list star, Farrah became a name the media doubted and producers were cautious about. After going public with the relationship, Farrah moved in with Ryan O'Neal. At first, people thought it was just a short fling, but their relationship lasted for decades, full of chaos, jealousy, and tears. Ryan was charming and talented, but unstable, moody, and controlling. They fought, broke up, got back together, and appeared in tabloids for dramatic fights and reunions more exciting than any TV show. Farrah's friends remembered nights when she sat alone crying until her voice broke because Ryan stormed out for days. The fancy Malibu mansion was now just crashing waves and cold loneliness. In her loneliest moments, Farrah began to miss Lee Majors, the ex-husband who waited for her after filming, who made her warm tea and asked, "Are you tired?" She once told a close friend, "I chose the wrong man." Farrah picked up the phone, dialed Lee's number, then stopped.
Finally, one night in 1984, after Ryan left in anger, she called. The phone rang forever. No one answered. She tried again, her voice shaking more each time, but the other end was only cold silence. The silence of a man who once loved her completely, now not willing to hear her voice. When the call ended, Farrah fell to the floor, hands holding the phone. She whispered, "He's really gone." In 1985, she gave birth to her only son, Redmond O'Neal. but the child couldn't save the relationship. Redmond grew up around violence, seeing police come to the house, and later got into drugs. Farrah once said, "I traded everything for love, but sometimes love isn't enough to keep you sane." A regret that stayed until death. After the most famous divorce in early 1980s Hollywood, Lee Majors chose to disappear. No books about his life, no interviews, no blaming anyone. While the world still talked about Farrah Fawcett, the legendary blonde angel, Lee stayed silent so much that some people thought he'd left America. When asked if he ever watched Charlie's Angels, the show that made Farrah famous, Lee gave a small smile and said, "I can't. It's too painful to watch someone I loved knowing she's not mine anymore." While Farrah lived in the media storm, constantly seen with Ryan O'Neal, Lee chose the opposite path. He left the red carpet, moved to a quiet neighborhood, focused on work, and almost disappeared from show business. In the early 2000s, a friend they both knew tried to bring them together. "Farrah wants to see you, just to talk," they said. Lee paused for a few seconds, then replied shortly, "I don't want to go back. Some doors once closed are best left that way." When news came out about Farrah's cancer in 2006, Lee Majors stayed silent. He didn't send messages, didn't visit the hospital, but family said he quietly followed the news without saying a word. In 2009, when Farrah died, Hollywood was sad and mourning. Ryan O'Neal cried on camera. Stars sent flowers, but Lee Majors didn't. He only gave a short, formal statement. "Farrah was a special woman. I wish her peace." No flowers, no showing up, no tears in public. And maybe that silence, not hateful, not romantic, not for show, was the truest goodbye Lee Majors could give to the woman who once amazed the world and broke his heart beyond repair. Time passed, and Lee Majors slowly found the peace he thought he'd lost. In 2002, he married again to Faith Cross, a gentlewoman far from Hollywood's noise. Lee's life became stable, simple, and quiet. No more parties, no cameras, no flashes. But no matter how the years changed, Farrah Fawcett's shadow never fully left him. In rare interviews, when her name came up, Lee gave a small smile, his eyes showing sadness. He didn't speak, but everyone could feel it. Beneath the wrinkles and calm of old age, a scar remained that never healed. Their story had no warm ending, no final meeting, no apologies, no goodbye hug, no tears. Just two people who once loved each other deeply and then went separate ways, living the rest of their lives with memories too painful to talk about. For Lee, his decades of silence weren't hate, but a way to protect what was left. The memories once so beautiful, they hurt. He knew that holding on or explaining would ruin those memories with excuses and blame, so he chose silence, as if still keeping a quiet corner for Farrah in his heart. A close friend of Lee's once said, "He never forgave Farrah, but he never stopped loving her." Maybe that was Lee Majors' greatest tragedy, that the woman he couldn't forgive was also the one he couldn't forget. And in quiet nights, when the wind whispered through the window, maybe in his heart, the image of that blonde angel still stayed there, the woman who once made the world look up and left his heart forever restless. Farrah Fawcett and Lee Majors' story isn't just a broken romance. It's the tragedy of people crushed by the very glamour they created. They once loved passionately and believed that they could face the world together. But in a world where cameras never stop, true love wasn't strong enough to survive. Lee Majors once said in a late conversation at 80, "If I could go back, I'd take her away from Hollywood. Maybe then we'd still be together."
And though time has buried everything, somewhere in those old films, their looks at each other remain silent, intense, and painfully eternal. Farrah's life after divorcing the perfect man. Rejected by Hollywood, Farrah tried to reinvent herself with roles that broke her blonde angel image. She starred in The Burning Bed in 1984, a TV movie about a badly abused woman who sets her house on fire to get her freedom back. The role earned her Emmy and Golden Globe nominations, opening a new chapter, not as a beauty icon, but as an actress daring to step out of her own shadow. She once said, "I don't need to be loved anymore. I need to be recognized." But fate wasn't finished with her. As her career came back to life, scandals about her personal life, fights with Ryan, and her son's arrests for drugs kept her name all over tabloids. Farrah fell into a cycle of pity, where the public was both curious and judgmental. In 2006, while filming a documentary about art, Farrah found out she had a rare, aggressive cancer. Instead of hiding, she shared her battle in Farrah's story. In her final months, the one by her side was Ryan O'Neal, the man who once broke her heart. He stayed day and night taking care of her, holding her hand through treatments. Ryan remembered, "Some nights I just watched her sleep. I knew I'd been wrong, but I didn't know how to make it right, except to stay." Though no longer married, Farrah and Ryan shared a strange bond, a flawed love both destructive and haunting. On June 25, 2009, Farrah Fawcett took her last breath at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. When the news came out, the world was shocked. That same day, Michael Jackson's death overshadowed her passing in the media. But for those who knew Farrah, they understood a true American icon had faded, alone but proud. Farrah Fawcett died at 62, carrying scars not just on her body, but in her soul. She wasn't the perfect angel Hollywood painted. She betrayed, fell, hurt, and rose again. In a final interview, she said, "I'm not afraid of death. I'm only afraid people will remember me for my mistakes, not for living true." But maybe that's what made her an icon. Not her beauty, but her courage to face it all. Fame, love, sin, and death. And though Lee Majors never forgave her, though Ryan O'Neal never truly changed, to the public, Farrah Fawcett remained the woman who dared to love, lose, and live authentically in a world full of pretending. Her 1976 red swimsuit photo still hangs on millions of walls across America, not just as a symbol of beauty, but as a memory of a woman who paid with her life to hold on to her freedom. Looking back at Lee Majors' amazing career, before becoming the $6 million man, Lee Majors was just an orphan from Kentucky. Born in 1939 as Harvey Lee Yeary, tragedy hit before he could speak his first full sentence. His father died in an accident, and 2 years later, his mother was killed on her way to work. Lee was adopted by relatives and raised in Middlesboro, a small town covered in coal dust. There he grew up in silence, a quiet boy with sad but determined eyes. He once said, "I learned not to rely on anyone. To survive, I had to be stronger than any pain." As a teenager, sports became his only escape. He was a football star in high school and later earned a full scholarship to Eastern Kentucky University. Everyone believed his future was in the NFL, America's top football league. But in 1959, a terrible collision ended it all. Badly injured in his spine, Lee Majors was stuck in bed for months. During that time, he started reading novels, watching films, and dreaming of a world he never thought he'd belong to, Hollywood. After getting better, Lee moved to Los Angeles with $200 and a few amateur photos. He had no connections, no agent, no acting experience. But Lee had something Hollywood always wanted: real masculinity. He worked as a laborer, a driver, then enrolled in acting classes at the Estelle Harmon Actors Workshop, where talents like Burt Reynolds and Clint Eastwood also studied. His big break came when he was cast as Heath Barkley in the classic TV series The Big Valley, 1965 to 1969, alongside star Barbara Stanwyck. Heath, An illegitimate son raised in poverty, fighting for recognition, seemed written for Lee Majors. Audiences loved his steady gaze and quiet way. From a nobody, he became America's most beloved TV star, a symbol of the real, strong, honest man. Barbara Stanwyck once said of him, "Lee Majors doesn't need to act. He just stands there, and people believe." In 1973, Lee Majors was cast as Colonel Steve Austin in The $6 Million Man, a pilot rebuilt with bionic technology, giving him superhuman arms, legs, and eyes. No one expected the show to become a global cultural phenomenon. The team music, the beep-beep sound Steve used his powers, the iconic slow-motion jumps over fences all became symbols of the 1970s. At its peak, 1974 to 1978, The $6 Million Man aired in over 70 countries. Dolls, lunchboxes, comics, posters all had Lee Majors' face on them. He became the national hero, an icon of courage and futuristic technology. But behind the glory, Lee Majors was deeply lonely. He filmed 14 hours a day with little time for himself or his young wife, Farrah Fawcett, who was struggling to build her own career. Lee once shared, "I lived like a machine. They turned me on when they needed a hero, then shut me off when I was tired." The physical and emotional exhaustion made Lee grow cold and distant, especially with Farrah, who was becoming a global icon herself. While Lee was at his peak with The $6 Million Man, Farrah entered her golden era with Charlie's Angels in 1976. They became America's most powerful couple, but fame drove them apart. After the divorce, Lee Majors mostly withdrew from the media. He sold his Beverly Hills mansion, moved to Florida, lived quietly, and took only enough film projects to get by. But fate wasn't done. In 1981, he returned with The Fall Guy, playing Colt Seavers, a stuntman and bounty hunter. The show was a massive hit, running for 5 seasons and bringing Lee back into audiences' hearts. Yet he was no longer the eager man of the 1970s. He took smaller roles, appearing in Walker, Texas Ranger, The Game, and Ash vs. Evil Dead. Iconic guest spots where he was invited not just for his acting, but because he was Lee Majors, a living legacy of a golden era. Today, when Lee Majors is mentioned, people remember Steve Austin running in slow motion across a field, the music playing, and the words on screen, "We can rebuild him. We have the technology." It wasn't just a line. It was the philosophy of his life. Lee Majors was rebuilt many times, from an orphan to an athlete, from an athlete to an actor, from a broken husband to a quiet man rediscovering himself. He's proof that true strength isn't in muscles or fame, but in rising after everything has fallen apart. In 2023, at Comic-Con in San Diego, Lee Majors stepped onto the stage with silver hair, a warm voice, and the same smile as always. Thousands stood and clapped. Someone shouted, "We love you, Steve Austin." He smiled, nodded, and said softly, "Thank you, but today I'm just Lee." Modest and understated, Lee Majors remains an icon of an era when heroes needed no capes, no CGI, just a steady gaze and an honest heart. He once said, "I never thought I'd be a legend. I just tried to live decently, act true, and love true." Now in his 80s, he lives peacefully with his 4th wife. No fancy mansions, no cameras, no scandals. Each morning, he waters his garden, occasionally watching The $6 Million Man on an old DVD, but only for a few minutes. He said, "I don't watch too long. That man on screen isn't me anymore." Lee Majors was never the star who bragged or took credit. He came to Hollywood not to become a legend, but to find himself. And though life took much from him, parents, sports,
love, marriage,